And we're back now with Counselor to the President Ed Gillespie, former chairman of the Republican National Committee, and not only a colleague of Tony Snow, who died this week, but also a neighbor and a longtime friend. And that's what we have asked you to come by to talk about. But I have to ask you about these headlines in the paper this morning. Is the United States planning, considering speeding up the withdrawal of American forces in Iraq?
Well, Bob, as you know, this month, the last of the Return on Success brigades, the initial Return on Success brigades, those 5 brigades that are coming home and have been coming home from Iraq because of the increased security there and the increased ability of the Iraqi government to handle its own security. And that is a process that was put in place and announced, recommended to the President by General Petraeus and announced.
But now there are reports that we may go beyond that.
Well, that's always, though, been a possibility, and we're in a period now where General Petraeus and General Odierno and other commanders in the field are evaluating the conditions on the ground as these troops have left, and they've always said that they would come back with further recommendations as to whether or not we can bring home more troops. Understand, it's always been the goal of this administration to bring troops home from Iraq, but to do so based on conditions on the ground and understanding that we do so based on success that allows for a stable Iraqi government to take root.
When will we think that decision would be made?
Well, what General Petraeus said when he testified before Congress and recommended to the President, and the President announced the Return on Success withdrawals, that we would, after those were done, we would have a period of pause, strategic evaluation, and we're in that period now, which is why I suspect you're starting to see some reports show up in the media from unnamed sources that this period of evaluation is coming to an end, and there may be some additional recommendations coming.
Let's talk about Tony Snow a little bit. Greta Van Susteren over at Fox News said to me yesterday, she said, you know, the thing that kind of set Tony Snow apart was that people said nice things about him while he was alive.
Yeah,
they didn't wait until after he died. I think that was true.
It is true. One of the good guys. And, you know, an interesting thing about Tony, I think, is that he was so good at what he did, whether it was as a commentator, as a newsman, as an editorial writer, as a press secretary, as a speechwriter, because he cared deeply about the issues. And he was always positive and upbeat and optimistic. And people resonated with people. I can tell you, Bob, that Tony and I went way back. I knew him when he and I were in jobs that Washington didn't deem to be important, and then we were friends when we were both in jobs that were considered important by Washington standards. But I also knew him when he was in an important job and I wasn't, and he was always the same, and always treated me very kindly and with respect. And but mostly, we did, as you mentioned, live in the same area. Our kids were in the same sports leagues, and I got to see him where things really matter, which is on the sidelines of the soccer field with his children.
You know, as a cancer survivor myself, I always appreciated the way Tony was very upfront about cancer. He confronted it. He thought it was important to talk about it. He wanted to make sure everybody knew that you should get your checkup, you should do all the things the doctor told you to do. I never once heard him say, why me, or this is unfair. In fact, he said at one point that he thought it may have been the best thing that ever happened to him because he came to know more about himself and he was able to get out and talk about it.
And he was inspirational to those of us who, as you noted, after having been his friend and neighbor and having been a source, he and I became co-workers and colleagues in the White House, and he was an inspiration to those of us who worked side by side, shoulder to shoulder with him as he met the challenges of a very demanding job and at the same time waged a fight with cancer and did so in a way that not only I think helped him deal with it, but in his own way helped a lot of other people deal with cancer as well.
You know, we talk about what makes a good spokesman, and one of the things, he had a lot of credibility because he seemed to enjoy talking to reporters, which gets to be a kind of a rare thing around here lately. The reporters, he seemed to enjoy the briefings, and there was a lot of back and forth, but he always kept it at a certain level. It never got too personal, it seemed.
Never, and of course he was one of the few actual newsmen who became a spokesman and came from the industry itself and knew that side of the business so well. But his jousting with the media in the briefing room was a lot of fun to watch. I always said that Tony Snow's briefings could air not only on C-SPAN but on pay-per-view. They were that they were that entertaining, but informative, and he had a great way of capturing these somewhat esoteric and complicated debates in a way that resonated with people because, you know, like I said, Tony came from a humble background, and he had a lot of friends who weren't just in the political business or cabinet secretaries, but maybe ran the hardware store or worked in the local community, and he stayed in touch with that mindset.
Well, we just wanted to take some note of Tony's passing. Ed, thank you very much for coming by today.